This college dropout just hit $10 million a year, and he's sharing exactly how he did it.
When I dropped out of school, I had a mentor in the internet marketing world. I was already learning through his online course thing, and I'm like, hey, crazy idea. What if I move across the country into your house? He's like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
That is a great
Do not do that.
But Chandler had something that most entrepreneurs don't, a system turning problems into profit.
Find the biggest bottleneck or problem in your life right now. Then what's the best book on that topic? Buy the book, read the book, implement it, read the next book.
This approach helped him build a $75 million publishing empire. But what's most impressive is how he validates every idea before even building it.
Big takeaway for folks watching this, sell then build. Most people think they need to build the product and then sell it. I did that at first, it totally failed.
In this interview, you'll learn how to validate any business idea in just 30 days, the sell first, build later method that made him millions, and why college dropouts often outperform MBAs in entrepreneurship. Let's dive in.
All right, Chandler Bolt, I hate asking this question, but this is what everyone wants to know. How much money does your boring business make?
75 million over the last decade.
And how about this last year?
About 10 million.
And when did you start it?
2015.
And how old are you?
32.
How did you first get into this business thing?
I went to school, to college to learn how to run a business, realized I was learning how to run a business from professors who have never ran businesses. Meanwhile, I was actually running businesses, learning way more doing that. So I said, this is dumb, I'm dropping out. And then as I dropped out, wrote a couple books. They started doing pretty well. People started asking, hey, how are you doing this whole book thing? And I just get on the phone with them and teach them stuff. And then finally it kind of evolved into a full-blown business.
And when did you first sort of create it? So you dropped out of school and then you came up with the offer. Like, what does that initially look like? How old were you and what happened?
Yeah, the first one was in 2014. We launched the first cohort. It was 44 people and it was just group coaching and training. We wanted to prove, hey, can we do this? Like, I know I've done it. Can we help other people do it? So we took this cohort through. They got over 60% of them got their books done in less than 6 months, which is crazy. So then we said, okay, this is working. Now let's scale.
And you knew you did it at that point. How did you figure it out for yourself? Like, you were young, you dropped out of college, you didn't have the education.
Guerrilla marketing, baby. I mean, when I was in college, I ran my first 6-figure business. It was an exterior house painting business. So it was an organization called Student Painters. They basically give you a zip code and some marketing materials and some training and say, have at it. And so think of it kind of like a franchise meets internship. And so I'm knocking on doors, having people cuss me out, pull weapons, like, you can imagine that is how I cut my teeth with entrepreneurship. And so I was the number one in the country, number one in the company out of all of their managers. So it was like 200 and something managers in the whole country. I learned how to do that. And so then when I published a book, I said, well, why don't we just do those same things and just guerrilla market, hand-to-hand combat, get PR, get on podcasts, like do all the non-sexy things that is what actually makes it pop.
And I'm sure you tried a bunch of things that haven't worked, a handful of things that have really worked. What are some of the core components of your initial offering that really resonated with people?
I think it was 2 things. 1, that we were really honest, and 2, that we had affiliates. So, I mean, we were just we said, we've never done this before, but we're going to do it. And so this is actually, I would zoom out and say, big takeaway for folks watching this, sell then build. Most people think they need to build the product and then sell it. I did that at first. It totally failed. I think you need to sell the product and then build it. And so that's what we did. I mean, we sold it and we said, we've never done this before, but we're going to do it. And it's going to be the best price ever. You'll get the most access to us ever. And we're going to build it specifically to exactly what you want. We did that and people really resonated. They're like, oh, this is epic. And so we pre-sold, I think, 86 grand. And then we went and built the exact product alongside them that they wanted. So I think that was a big part. And then we had affiliates who helped us, we kind of borrowed someone else's audience. But to come back to what you said earlier, I think marketing is kind of like baseball. If you bat 300, you're in the Hall of Fame in baseball. Well, if 3 out of 10 marketing ideas work, so to your point, I mean, we've got way more things that don't work than that do work. And so I just want to go 3 for 10. If we can go 3 for 10, I'm super happy with that.
You're very well read and you have a lot of these frameworks, which we'll talk about. And somebody watching this video can maybe hear your story and then apply it to a completely different industry, let alone maybe there's an idea for a book or how to approach it with their business. Can you just talk about like what your offering is today and what part of that offering is most compelling to business owners?
Yeah, well, I mean, we look at it as the book's the vehicle. We're in the business of changing lives through books. We believe that books change lives, but we know that the book is the best way to grow impact income in a business. So really, for us, it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, we're going to help you create a great book. A lot of people can do that. Where we really differentiate is how do we use this book to create outsized returns in your business, bring leads, sales, referrals, like all that stuff.
How would you look at AI today as a threat to your business, as an accelerator?
Yeah, I think it's an accelerator. I mean, I think a lot of people look at it as a threat, and it is a threat if you're just doing low cost, low margin, crappy books, which has never been our business.
Yeah.
We want to go really high quality books, but to have a purpose beyond the book so that they deliver outsized returns in your business or the main thing you're trying to do.
And you've written a book. I see it everywhere. And what have been the benefits of that book to you?
Well, this book right here has brought in about $7 million in sales over the last 12 months and tens of millions of dollars total for the business. The reason you see it everywhere is intentional because we integrate it into everything we do in the business. So the book brings in more leads, brings in more sales, brings in more referrals.
And what would you say to somebody who maybe doesn't have a business yet, to start with the book or just start with the business?
I think either way, you got to sell then build. For me, one of my first businesses started on the back of a book. This business that I'm running right now was born with a book. I mean, so I published the book, used the book as part of the launch of the business. We pre-sold and then we scaled. Either way, you got to sell then build.
Was there ever a time where you thought that this wasn't going to work out?
It's like how many hands you got? There were so many times, man. There was this time where early on, I'll never forget, it's like, okay, we're trying to get traction. And I remember the first year, we did $86,000 in revenue. There were three of us, three business partners at the time, including myself. That was revenue, not even profit. I made so little money that year that the IRS just said, you're good. Please do not file a tax return. You're below the poverty line. No, we don't need anything from you. And so that was pretty tough. And then the next year we did $1 million. And I'm like, all right, $1 million top line. Mama, we made it. But then I show up to an offsite, ironically, here in Austin. I didn't live here yet. And found out from one of my employees that my business partner's trying to kick me out of the business. So then we went through this whole mediation, negotiated a buyout, and I bought him out. I went multiple six figures in debt, borrowed from my parents' retirement. I borrowed from my brother, and I borrowed from a guy named Hal Elrod. And I just went all in. And so it was right at the moment where I thought I was about to start making money, I instead went six figures in debt. And it was just this kind of push all the chips in the table moment where I'm not losing my parents' retirement, so failure is not an option. But it was so freeing because it was just me now. So success or failure of this business, it's like the Chris Stapleton song, it's like nobody to blame but me. And so I'm pointing to other people, but now there's nobody to point to. And it was the best decision I ever made.
I don't like to use the D word, but I'm going to use it for this. I think that you're a disruptor. You took this old school industry, call it, publishing industry, and you found an alternative way to provide a different or more premium service. Do you look at yourself as a disruptor, or what is your narrative around what you're offering?
I'd say I've been called a lot worse, even just a lot worse D names. I would say yes, we absolutely disrupted the publishing industry. I look at what we did in the publishing industry as kind of the Uber to the taxi industry, which I know everybody says that. It's a kind of a boring trope or a well-ridden path. But it was taxis. Everyone knew they sucked and it was a bad experience. It was a little slimy, but you had no other options. Then along came Uber, there's a new option. Same things existed in the publishing industry for a long time. It's traditional publishers. No one has a good experience. They do no marketing for your book, and yet they have a monopoly on the industry. But Amazon obviously democratized distribution, and then we created a vehicle to accelerate that. So early on, I had people from big traditional publishers who they told me they were passing my name around and they're like, who does this kid think he is? And because we just came in and we kicked the doors down.
Yeah. And you used a traditional, we'll call it internet marketing approach to come up with an offer, pre-sell it, find an audience, and it worked really well for you. You're saying you could still use that today. Do you think somebody watching this video can use the principles of what you've learned in your industry and apply that today to a completely different industry that maybe maybe is primed for disruption with AI and all the other things.
100%. I look at it as you use the proven model and you replicate it in your industry, right? So for me, to your point, the proven model was, hey, internet marketing launches. Those seem to really work. There's a lot of people doing $1 million launches. Let's just do that, but in the book publishing industry, non-sexy industry, right? Which so a lot of people say like, oh, why would you want to do books? I mean, that's really boring. Sure. But it's also really profitable if you use a proven model, right? So that's where in the early days, we said, okay, well, let's package this in a way. And I didn't invent this. I learned from someone who had done it. I'm a big fan of this concept called who, not how. Anytime I run into a problem in my life or in my business, I try to ask who has solved this before, not how do I solve it. And so when I dropped out of school, I had a mentor in the internet marketing world. And I said, all right, well, I'm dropping out. I was already learning like through his online course thing. And I'm like, hey, crazy idea. What if I move across the country into your house? He's like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
That is a great
Do not do that. And I'm like, no. Here's why you should let me do this. And so I basically convinced him to let me move into his house in Des Moines, Iowa. And so everyone was like, Chandler, you're an idiot. What are you doing? I dropped out of school, moved across the country to Des Moines, Iowa. I totally burned all the boats and moved into his house in a mattress on the floor, but then incubated selfpublishing.com on that mattress. He's like, hey, you should just use this model that I used for your book stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So then we just literally, I think I heard, Dan Martell was the first one I heard say this. He calls it R&D, research and development is what most people think, but he says rob and duplicate. It's like, just use the thing, rob it, duplicate it in your industry.
So you launched this thing. How long did it take for you to get profitable? And like, what did that look like from there?
So first year, not even filing a tax return, I'm broke. Second year, okay, we're about to make money, go 6 figures in debt. I would say it's probably year 3 is when we really broke through. And so that was when we started to turn a profit. I paid off all that debt over the next 11 months, basically. Then we really turned a profit. And then I'd say it was either year 4 or 5 was our first year doing $1 million in bottom line.
Year 4 or 5. Now looking back, knowing everything that you know today, how would you have maybe collapsed that timeline?
There's a quote that I love from Keith Cunningham. He says, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. And so I think early on in business, I call it chasing the revenue rabbit. You just want to generate revenue. Revenue is the answer. What's the question again? Right? That's good. I mean, you don't have revenue, you don't have a business. So that's really good. But then you realize, hold up, we got to be profitable. And so I think that was the part that I didn't really understand is the mechanics of business. We need to be profitable. And then it was, hey, I think we're making money, but we got no cash in our bank account. What's going on with that? Well, profit isn't cash. That's why cash is king. You run out of cash, you're out of business, whether you're profitable or not. What I would go back and do is really study and look at those things and make sure that I'm not just blowing money just to get early revenue traction.
I've heard you say this before of like, you don't just read books to read books. You're very prescriptive in your reading. You have a problem and then you go and seek out the best book to solve that problem. Can you talk about some of the problems you've had throughout your business journey and what specific books you sought out and what you learned from them?
Yeah, I mean, I always say a book's $15 mentor, right? It's the best deal on the planet.
Yeah.
Pay $15 in a handful of hours, you can learn from the smartest, most successful people on the best things that they know. So it's exactly what you said. It's find the biggest bottleneck or problem in your life right now. Then what's the best book on that topic? Buy the book, read the book. And so I think at different phases of the journey, I mean, I remember we ran into a wall business-wise, and I just realized like, hey, I'm a really good manager, horrible leader. So I said, I'm going to read every leadership book I can get my hands on. And that was my theme of the year. And I just went back to back to back to back. So it's just like kind of adapting to what's going on right now in the business and what's going on in my life. What's the biggest problem or bottleneck? And then I kind of like to go deep on a subject. So I'm getting my private pilot's license right now. I've been reading a bunch of books on that, right? So it's just like, okay, what's the thing that I'm trying to solve? And then let me just hammer it with a bunch of books. Because I dropped out of school. I mean, there was always this insecurity of like, I missed all the business classes. So what do I know? I need to learn this stuff. And so I just turned to books instead of staying in college.
And not only are you well read, but you've synthesized these and you've come up with your own frameworks. Can you talk about what are some of the most impactful frameworks that you've developed? Maybe starting with the more writing method, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that relates to writing a book, but it also could be like if you're going to come up with a course, or even just like we were talking about strategies for tactics of having a strategy, use this strategy for whatever you're creating. So can you talk about that method?
Yeah. So the more writing method, it's mind map, outline, rough draft, editing, right? And it's a way of getting stuff out of your head and structured into a book. But to your point, I use that same process when I'm designing a talk that I got to go give. When I'm designing a video that I'm trying to create, it's like, okay, what are all the ideas on this topic? Now let me turn that mind map into an outline. Now let me use that outline to create the rough draft, right? And writing, it's obviously, writing one chapter at a time. In video, it's okay, we got the teleprompter, I've got the outline, let's roll, right? And so it's just like, I think it's such a universally applicable thing.
When you first had the thought of writing a book, your first book, how did that happen? And like, I'd imagine you look back and came up with that structure, but for somebody watching this, like, yeah, I think maybe someday I'll write a book. Would you tell them to start mind mapping and thinking the chapters, or how would you think of it?
First, you got to mind map. So as soon as you're done watching this video, if you're thinking about writing a book, take 15 minutes, mind map everything you can think of on the topic. You'll be amazed at how much you have to say.
And just a quick tactical thing, when you say mind map, any particular like tool that you like, or just a piece of paper and an actual just pen?
Yeah, I actually prefer that you don't use a tool, and paper and pen.
Okay.
That's it. Because
okay.
so many people are like, oh, cool, I'm going to create a mind map. Let me Google best mind mapping. And then like
bog down the details.
An hour and a half later, they're looking for mind mapping software, or they download the software and they're like trying to drag the circle and whatever. I'm like, just get a freaking piece of paper.
That's the best way to never write a book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? But this is the funny thing about doing creative things or doing hard things, is that your brain will do everything to keep you, everything else to keep you from doing that thing. Right. So, I mean, I think that's kind of funny, but I'm just like, hey, grab a piece of paper and then write it out.
And so you have this, and then sometimes will you instruct maybe a business owner of, man, there's this framework that keeps coming up. Okay, I've kind of mind mapped that, outlined it, and then just sit on it until the time is right to fully flesh it out? Or first you just got to commit to writing the book or creating the course and then like push it through?
You got to commit. It starts with saying, hey, I'm going to do this. But I think if people are watching this, listening to this, if you find yourself repeating yourself all the time in your business, it's probably time to write a book, right? And if you have a coaching program or a course, probably time to write a book. You've already written it, you just didn't know it yet. It's in the course that you already created, right? Or if you have an agency, it's like you're probably running into the same things over and over and over again with clients. You're talking about the same things on discovery calls. You're solving the same problems. You're doing the same onboarding. Call 3, month 3. People are churning for this reason. It's like, just write the book on all those things, and you've already written it. It's just synthesizing what you know.
Maybe another framework. Can you talk about the 4 Ps? What's that?
Yeah. Person, pain, promise, price. So this is the 4 Ps of a best-selling book, but it's also the 4 Ps of a high converting offer or business. So it's person, who's the person that you know who needs help with this pain that they have. And so I always say, it's like, I think about this in books, but I also think about it in business. It's like, okay, if I'm writing a book, well, I want you to think of one person that you actually know who needs this, right? And in your life, not an avatar person that you know, then what's the pain that they have that they know that they have? What's the promise that you can make in this book? And then what's the price point? That's pretty straightforward on the book side. But when in your business, who's the person that you can best solve this problem for? What's the pain that they have that they know that they have? Which that's a really big one. A lot of times, because you're the expert, you're solving for the problem that you know that they have that they don't know that they have.
You have an example of that?
Yeah. I would say, let's imagine for a second, I'm a physical therapist and I'm trying to help people with back pain. And now I know that the problem that they have is their posture. It's like, oh, I'm sitting on my wallet and that's why I have back pain. Well, I'm going to write a posture book. But if I'm the guy with back pain, I don't know that I have crappy posture. I just know that I have back pain. So we call it chocolate covered broccoli. It's like, hold out the chocolate that they want. And that's the problem that they have that they know that they have. And then the broccoli's inside. Right? So I'm not leading with the broccoli. I'm not like, hey, you want to eat healthier? No, I don't. I have back pain. Max is like, hey, you want me to give you some posture tips? Absolutely not. I can't think of anything more important. But it's like, oh, but you want to solve your back pain? Yes. What if you tried this? So it's solving for the problem that they know that they have. And then what's a compelling promise that they're willing to pay for?
If you solve the first 3, it gives you more leverage on the price, right? It was just like, you've described their problem in their words better than they could have. And they're like, my pain so much, please fix it.
When that goes back to what Dane would always say. He always had a quote that I loved. He said, if you can describe someone's problem more eloquently than they can, they will assume that you have a solution, and they will pay you for that assumed solution. So the key is to just figure out how to articulate their problem better than they can.
How has that evolved for you? Was there any like language that you were using that you've then changed?
Yeah, I mean, how it evolved is especially early on, because we just had no idea. We didn't have product market fit, right? And I think there's two distinct phases for a business. There's pre-product market fit and post-product market fit. Before product market fit, it is a slog. I mean, you're just beating your head against the wall. Post-product market fit, it's like way easier to scale, to stack, to add channels, add revenue, all that stuff. And so we were kind of before this line because we were just figuring it out. And so what we did that I highly recommend that people just R&D this, we just did why didn't you buy calls. And so then everyone who didn't buy as part of the launch, I said, hey, curious, you applied to work with us, you decided not to buy. I'd love to chat for 15 minutes, get some feedback. And then I just had this series of questions in an Excel spreadsheet. It's like, okay, how'd you hear about us? What'd you think about this? What'd you think about the price? Why did you decide not to buy? All this stuff. And what's the problem that you're trying to solve? And so then I would just enter it in this Excel spreadsheet. And a couple things happened. One, a bunch of those people bought.
Nice.
Because it's like just turned into an objection handling call essentially. But then the second thing, which I think was more valuable, is we had a spreadsheet full of quotes directly from them. So then the next time that we launched, we went back to that spreadsheet and we said, okay, what was the problem that they were trying to solve? What was the thing that they thought was really valuable? And we would just repeat back to them what they said previously, but in all of our sales copy and marketing copy and all that stuff. And then people are like, hey, it feels like you're reading my mail. Like, how do you know this? It's like, well, because we're just repeating back what other people that were like you told us 3-6 months ago. And so that absolutely changed everything.
How do you think about the value ladder? And where'd you come up with that?
Yeah, so the value ladder is more of I think maybe Russell Brunson popularized it. There's a bunch of people who have talked about it. It's give away all of your best stuff for free and people will pay you to tell it to them again. All right, which that's not really what the value ladder means, but oversimplified, that's how I think about it. And there's rungs of the value ladder. There's teach me how to do it, show me how to do it for me, right? So I always think the book is kind of the teach me how to do it. Then the show me how to do it is a course or coaching. Then do it for me is done for you services.
You mentioned a couple moments ago, chocolate covered broccoli. And one, I just love that term. And so now if somebody has tasted the chocolate covered broccoli, what is the broccoli for the founder or entrepreneur watching this who's just like, okay, we got him in here. We're talking about this business stuff. What is maybe the message that you think that they maybe don't want to hear, but need to hear?
It ain't easy. That's the broccoli. It is not easy. And in fact, a lot of days it's not even that fun. Like if you're getting into entrepreneurship because you want the Lambo and you want the flashy stuff and just quit. Like just don't do it. There's a bunch of other things that you could do, make great money. You can be an employee and make great money. Like there's so many other things. Like you got to want it. You got to love it. You got to be committed to it because it takes work ethic. It takes sacrifice. It takes discipline. It takes tenacity. And I think that's what has set me apart is I'm not that smart. Like, I think it's a powerful thing. I think I grew up in a small town. My parents met working night shift at a factory. There was a time when all my back home buddies are like, oh, what's Chandler doing? It's like everybody makes fun of you until they see the result. And to be clear, they still make fun of me. But now it's in fun. But there was a moment I'll never forget where they came and they saw kind of my setup and they're like, hold up, I know you're not that much smarter than me. Like we grew up in the same freaking town, the same high school. So it's like, if Chandler can do that, what can I do? Just there's the work ethic, there's the discipline, there's the tenacity to never give up. And I think that's the most important one is because most people give up 3 feet from gold and they don't realize they were 3 feet from gold and you can't know unless you persist. And so that's at least what people tell me is just like, you never give up.
Okay, this next question. What's the power of getting in the room?
I think everyone wants a seat at the table, but nobody wants to stack the chairs. And you got to do whatever you can to get in the room. And a lot of times that means serving. And so early on, I wanted to go to these conferences because I knew that was the best place where all the smartest people went, but I couldn't afford a ticket. So then I just hit up the conference organizer and I said, hey, I'll stack the chairs, I'll run the mics, I'll pick the speakers up at the airport, whatever you need me to do. And then they brought me into the room. And then I was kind of the right-hand guy. And then I maximized the opportunity. My parents always said, bloom where you're planted. If you're sweeping the streets, be the best street sweeper that ever lived. And so I took that volunteer job super seriously. And I volunteered at those conferences. And I would literally be running the mics, running, sweating. And people noticed. And at the bar, they're bringing me over, buying me drinks and chatting me up. And so what happened was I met all of these people. Like I can think of one conference where I volunteered for mastermind talks with Jason Gaynor. I met Hal Elrod. I met Ryan Holiday. I met Dan Martell. I met James Clear. I met all of these people that now are either good friends, affiliates, or people that have sent us a ton of business. And it all happened because I got in the room.
Chandler Bolt, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it.